Hello listeners, welcome to MST Conversation. मेरा नाम राजिका है and today I bring to you a very special episode in MST Conversation. Here we have Mr. Vijay Nalawala with us, who is a bipolar survivor himself and also the founder of Bipolar India. So सबसे पहले sir, thank you so much for coming on board and talking to us.
My pleasure entirely, Rajika. And in fact, I thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts to your viewers. Yeah.
We are honored, sir. We are honored. So without wasting any time, and I just really want to know so much more about you. So can you just like tell us how did your journey start? What happened? How did Bipolar India actually come into existence?
Yeah. So my journey, I mean, that is a dramatic start to that flashpoint you could say in my journey. It was a day in the month of May 2003. All right. Where my sister, who was my caregiver, you could say, at way back then, noticed that I had a lot of spikes in moods. My behavior was very rational, and that I needed some attention. Obviously, we did not know what it was all about, what was my exact problem. And she somehow cajoled me to accompany her to a psychologist at Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai. All right. And by the way, at that time, I happened to be in full-blown mania. All right. So I was blabbering away to glory when I was talking to the psychologist. She heard me for a full 2 or 3 minutes and said that you have come to the wrong person. You need to take him to a psychiatrist, right? And right from there, we were rushed across to a psychiatrist in the suburbs, all right, of Mumbai, yeah, the western suburbs at Santa Cruz. And bipolar disorder is the easiest to diagnose when a person is in mania, because otherwise it can be sort of, misconstrued as a major depressive disorder or some other illness. I mean, so in a very short time, my diagnosis was out that my doctor said that you have manic depressive illness, as bipolar disorder was known as in 2003,
Yeah.
in clinical terms. Right. It is still referred to as manic depressive illness by some people. Yeah. And because the level of mania was so elevated, and he sensed that I might be difficult to be managed at home, I was advised hospitalization for a period of a week at Holy Spirit Hospital, Andheri, Mumbai. Rajika, that week was the worst week of my life. I can share this with you, because I wasn't prepared for anything like this. All right, because prior to that, life was gung ho. I was a successful entrepreneur, and this came as a massive setback. And initially, of course, I was just making sense of things, but the moment a little bit of realization came around, and then it started to sink in that now I'm mentally ill. That was a very stigmatizing thought for me, right? Yeah.
Right.
And see, of course, at that time awareness was very low. So I guess then because of that, the stigma was even more. All right, yeah. So people rarely opened up in that era. So I felt all the more alone, and I felt what I was going through was something very unique, and I felt very isolated back then. Yeah. And the crushing thoughts that come in at that time was, obviously was what would my colleagues talk about now? What would my peers say, my friends, what would my relatives talk about? Look at me differently now that I have a mental illness. So those kind of crushing thoughts. If you talk about 2003 and the period later, I think there is a massive quantum change in the level of awareness that we are seeing now. Yeah. One thing is the proliferation of the internet. Yeah. So that a lot of information is accessible to everybody. Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah. That is one thing. And I think the other enabler has been social media. Yeah. where people can sometimes even anonymously open up about their stories, about, you have so many young voices on Instagram, for instance. We have a lot of people sharing their issues on Twitter. So I think that has also been a game changer. Yeah. From 2003 on to say, I would say for the next 7-8 years, it was a struggle of ups and downs, right? It was quite difficult, at that period. Yeah. One realization that came to me was that there must be some other people like me who would like to connect to me and discuss these things with me. The window of opportunity that was presented to me was blogging. In the year 2012, I took to blogging. And in my personal blog, I shared my life journey living with bipolar disorder and sort of coming to terms with it. Yeah. And then there was a lot of, sort of the feedback was from very polarized, from as you would expect way back then, 2012. So a school friend of mine literally told me, "Are you trying to seek attention by, sharing your problems with the world and these kind of things?" Of course, I wasn't upset about that. I knew that this was, such kind of inputs were very rare at that time. Right? Yeah.
Right.
So the reactions would be like that. And then there were a lot of people who sort of appreciated me for my openness. Yeah. How was Bipolar India founded? After reading that post of mine and several posts that I wrote on general topics, a mentor friend of mine, Puneet Bhatnagar, one day called me up. All right. He said that I think you are onto something big, and I could not gauge what he was referring to. He says, you are talking about bipolar disorder on Facebook, on your personal blog. I think looking at the feedback you're getting, I think this needs to be taken up further. Right? He came and met me personally. Yeah. Understood exactly what was my story, what I had to communicate. And he felt that by starting a formal community for this disorder, we would be able to make a substantial difference in the society. Yeah. It was his brainchild to create a web-based community. The coinage was his, all right. Yeah, he happened to have a advertising background. A creative head at a national agency of repute. Yeah. So Bipolar India was his coinage. He registered the portal for me, all right. And then he said, now you are set to free to let it, roll. Yeah.
Right.
So that was in March 2013, Bipolar India was given birth in this way. So the initial period after founding it, I noticed that people were very hesitant to engage themselves in, in any formal conversation on the portal. Obviously, again, because see what happens is you are worried about being found out, about people identifying you, and that association of stigma and discrimination also haunts you, right? Yeah. And to my surprise, I found 80 to 90% of the visitors were from abroad. Okay, yeah. So that was not the intent at all, because see, there is a sort of excess exposure to these sort of platforms in the West, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think they need much more coming in with such a context. Yeah. So what I was looking forward to was more engagement from India. It took a number of years to break the ice. And I remember Puneet's vision way back then also. He says, you won't believe what you're on to. Just hold on to your vision and you will see how people will, rally around this whole project. And within a couple of years, the floodgates opened. We had a flurry of comments. It took one person to come in, then another person. And now if you go to a website, you will see so many people opening up about their condition, wanting to join in into a community. And they are not under pseudonyms or something. That's the brave part about it here. Many of them have actually shared their stories with us on our website under their own names. So even that was a encouraging sign. Yeah. So from that period, from 2013 to 20, it has been a quantum leap. But the going wasn't as easy as it would appear now, right? It took a lot of effort to sort of convince people to open up and join the community. Yeah.
Right. So, which one do you think was the biggest challenge? Reaching out to people, or convincing them to actually come and talk about what they're going through, or just providing them with support. What do you think was the biggest challenge that you saw in this entire, let's say, of this spanning 7 to 8 years that you have, been a part of Bipolar India?
Initially, of course, was the issue of reaching out. All right. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. Because how do we make people aware that there is such a portal in existence, that they can be, they can expect support and, comfort by being a part of this community? How do you reach out to them? All right.
Right.
Yeah. So see, if you look at it, even way back in 2013, social media was not so rampant as it is now. I mean, yeah, the use of social media, right, in India. Right? Yeah. Now we have so many communities. I mean, sub-communities on WhatsApp and Telegram and all those channels as well. So it's easier to get spread the word around. It wasn't so easy way back then. So that was certainly the challenge. See, once the ball is set rolling, everything else falls into place, Rajika, I believe. Yeah. So the other things were pretty easy to work out. There wasn't much of an issue there.
Yeah. Right. So do you think, let's say the Indian youth or the Indian society has come ahead in its understanding of bipolar disorder per se?
I would say it's a mix, yes and no. See, where understanding might be at a superficial level. All right. So see, how does understanding or awareness grow? From what we read in popular media, in what we see in films, which have a big influence over the Indian audiences, right? Yeah. And so on and so forth, or what we see on television, yeah, or in debates. We have a hot topic happening right now. I wouldn't even mention that because it's been done to death, and I don't want to further talk about that. So there is a lot of distortion also happening when we talk about how things are presented in public domain, right? Yeah. So awareness about, so the people many more people are aware that there is something known as bipolar disorder, that there is an illness of that nature, and maybe they are vaguely aware about what it entails. Yeah. But is that awareness sufficient? Yeah. I would say awareness is, I mean, the kind of awareness that we should seek is that if I am a lay person, I should be able to identify a situation where I feel that this person needs attention. Maybe I might not be able to diagnose things myself, but okay, I think this is a challenge where he or she needs professional help, right? And I would also be aware about whom to guide him to or guide her to. Yeah, that is a level of awareness and empathy that we would look for from society. Yeah, and the responses also, rather than shun a person who is depressed or who is behaving a bit erratically, to sort of understand their challenges and look at it in a different perspective. So that would be we are still not there, I feel. Right? Yeah, we are a long way off. Yeah.
Right. That is really true. We do have a long way to go. But
again, then coming, there is another aspect to it. Now, looking at awareness from a very different perspective, from a personal perspective. All right. Now, I said that I was diagnosed in 2003, right? Yeah. So at that time, I was all of 40 years old. Yeah. But can you believe when my onset of the symptoms actually happened, Rajika? You would be surprised. When I was a 14-year-old.
Right.
All right. So there was a 26-year gap between the actual onset of the condition and the diagnosis. So the awareness that you are talking about, yeah. So for instance, my first onset of symptoms were severe episodes of depression. All right. Yeah. So which can be easily be mistaken as, the teenage related problems or something, which are glossed over. And especially when you look at, I'm talking about late 70s and early 80s. Yeah. So you could imagine the utter lack of awareness, even the number of mental health professionals who one had access to, all those things. Yeah. And at that time, talk about mental health was almost non-existent in the public domain.
Yeah.
So in that context, of course, awareness has come. It is a big leap from there. So maybe, so I noticed this among our community members also. Many of our community members have been diagnosed at an early age, I think, and that's a big advantage. So to that extent, awareness is helping people. Yeah. So I'm sure that if I would ever, if I were a teenager at this juncture and I would have exhibited these symptoms, the gap between onset and diagnosis would have been shortened, right? Of course, immediately things might not be identified, but that is a difference I'm noticing.
Right.
In fact, a physician had told me that time to take vitamin B12 shots. He didn't even refer me to a professional, or he didn't perceive that I needed help. Although I had very clear symptoms of severe depression, even with paranoia and phobia and all those things. So I was a case for professional support.
Right. Definitely. Just hearing about it, I kind of, because this is way before my time. And just hearing about the situation there is kind of like just making me feel that I'm somewhat privileged to be born in such an era where at least some acceptance and some awareness of mental illness is coming about in our society.
Yeah.
So according to you, what do you think can be done to actually nurture mental health in the larger context? Where are the changes that you would like to see in our society?
There are multiple areas involved, I would say, Rajika. Yeah. Now, one of the biggest stressors is our educational system. Now, hopefully, the NEP will bring in massive changes. We can envisage that happening. Yeah. The rat race a kid goes through during high school, in early college, right? So I think mental health is, that is a critical year, adolescence and, the early teens and the early young days where a person's brain is still being formed. There is clash between boy child or girl woman, and the boy man, and that kind of identity crisis happening. And then you are sort of emburdened with so many pressures of performance at a competitive level, peer pressure, parental pressure. So I think that has to change fundamentally. Yeah. Secondly, at workplaces. Yeah. We spend a majority of our life either in education or at work. Yeah. So if we don't get the kind of nurture at the workplace, there are endless number of studies showing what is the level of depression and anxiety that the workforce is going through. Yeah. And that is heightened during this pandemic to a drastic extent. Yeah.
Right.
So is the atmosphere at the workplace conducive? Yeah.
Right.
one of our community members recently shared a huge infotech company in India has now empowered an employee to take leave for emotional wellness. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know whether you're aware of this or not. Yeah. So, and she shared that with me, and I said, "This is so encouraging. You know, this is what we would want every employer in India to do." Yeah.
Right.
And of course, that is an euphemism for mental health. Right? Okay, so it is to shield them from prying eyes from colleagues in the same company.
Yeah. Right.
So they have in-house psychologists and all that also, yeah, clinical psychologists. So the psychologists would be aware about the mental health issue. You know, so one can bravely open up about it without any fear of backlash.
Right.
But can you imagine applying for sick leave under that heading, you know, and not worrying about the repercussions? So
Right.
this is the kind of atmosphere one needs to have. One needs to have open conversations at the workplace. Yeah. Have policies where people will be accommodated for their, you know, certain periods where they are facing challenges. These kind of things. Then there are a lot of societal structures that need to change. You know, they are too complex to be discussed in such a, yeah, discrimination, you know, poverty elevation, many things that need to be done. Yeah.
Right.
Gender disparity, yeah, domestic violence, the endless things that we can talk about. So, but they do contribute to a person's mental illness or wellness, right? Either side, it pushes a person onto either side. Yeah.
Right. That's definitely there. So many factors are there,
Yeah.
you know, which are somewhat neglected by our government or policymakers, or even, let's say, educators in our system. So one such area which is also neglected is what we feel is the caregiver category. You know, there are people with diagnosis, and then there are caregivers. And we have seen in our research and in our practice that, you know, at least at least in current times, the people who get the diagnosis, they still get some sort of support, and you know, they have a diagnosis in hand and some sort of help they have. But the caregivers are just, you know, like, just completely neglected and like a part of the society who nobody really cares about. So what
Absolutely.
is your take? What is your take on this whole category of, you know, like, caregivers that we don't care about?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Rajika, and that's a massive community. Uh, if you look at any one person with a serious mental health issue, right, especially a chronic issue like, say, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, or even major depressive disorder, which runs through years and years and years, it it involves a family. It's not just one person; it's an entire family who is going through this ordeal. Society often overlooks this.
Right.
So a person might have one caregiver or even more than one caregiver. Yeah. In our community, our emphasis is not only including the persons living with mental health challenges, but their caregivers also. In fact, there's a flip side of the coin also. There are many caregivers who are in the community, and their wards are not part of it because they are still reluctant to join, you know, to open up and join in. Right? So I think these are inseparable parts of the, you know, picture. We can't separate them. And in fact, we even encourage some caregivers who are really stressed out, and especially if you look at many people with mental health challenges, there are two kinds of people, you know, all right. I mean, of course, and it's a broad divide I'm talking about. One, a person might be very cooperative, disciplined, and, you know, easy to sort of, you know, it's less of a challenge for the caregiver. And then there is a person who is in constant denial, who is rebellious about the whole, you know, diagnosis, and not compliant. I'm not passing judgment on the two types, mind you, right? But from the caregiver's perspective, so you can imagine, you know, what is the issue,
Right.
right? Yeah. So, so when a person is not compliant, and ultimately the person, the caregiver feels so helpless. I've sensed the helplessness of the caregivers because I have engaged myself in conversations with so many of them. Yeah, in fact, a majority of the conversations that happen between, I mean, one-on-one conversations are between caregivers and me in respect to their wards, because they are the ones looking for a ray of hope. How do they turn around the case in the family and so on. So we advocate therapy even for caregivers, when it comes to that. And we know of several such people from our community who are not only seeking therapy actively, but are also being treated for their own challenges.
Right.
Many have developed anxiety disorder. Now, to share something very personal, my sister was my caregiver for decades. I've also survived acute asthma, by the way, Rajika. Acute in the sense it was life-threatening on a number of occasions. Yeah. So, and it was at the onset was at the same age, 14, 15, and repeated episodes. I mean, you could say asthma has been a bigger threat in the earlier part of my life than bipolar disorder was at that time. Yeah. So you can imagine, and she was the person who was almost totally in charge, in my hospitalization at crucial moments and so on. Now, and later on, my mom got afflicted with cancer, and she passed away in 2017. So the long journey of 3 years or so of caregiving for her, what has it amounted to? Now she has developed general anxiety disorder. She had to seek therapy for it, and she is actually being treated for it. Yeah. So my level of awareness helps her in that context. That I could notice that she had some symptoms which were not just normal stress coming out. I mean, displaying itself or something. It was something more serious than that.
Yeah.
So this is example right in front of you. Yeah, how it manifests in something serious for even the caregiver. Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, she's coping very well, and she's managed to come out of that phase. But a person who had absolutely no major health history in her life, landed up here because of the contextual background. Yeah. So, of course, as you pointed out, caregivers are one community which we do not talk often enough, talk about enough. And in fact, we need maybe an all India community for caregivers, especially for caregivers, I would say. There is a time for that also. It has so many people I know. I mean, the numbers concerned are massive.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. We might, who knows, we might have such a community soon, which might really help. So on this note, can you tell me a little bit more about your community, about Bipolar India does? How does it support people with the diagnosis and also caregivers? So how does your support system work?
Yeah. Now, see, as I shared with you earlier, it began as just a web portal, right? Yeah. And the initial effort was just to garner people to join us, garner support and make people be interested in our activities and realize that there is something in it for them. Once that happened, once we attained a little bit of critical mass, we started offline peer support meets.
Right.
So that began in 2015, 5 years ago. Okay. So essentially, we were a Mumbai-based organization at that time. Yeah. And therefore, the peer meets also began in Mumbai. So since then, we have been meeting every month in a suburb of Mumbai, yeah, where people living with mental health issues, not only bipolar disorder, somebody with anxiety or somebody with depression come in, their caregivers come in, and we meet every single month, on a Sunday, given Sunday. Of course, the lockdown has put brakes on our plans. That it has just come as a disruptor for everybody, and
right.
So most offline activities are at a standstill. So are ours. And, so that is one thing that really worked well. And definitely meeting in person is very different from, an online meet that we can conduct, Of course, technology is an enabler there. What we have done is in the recent 3 months, we have conducted 12 meets over Zoom, all right, yeah, for community. And since now the distances don't matter, we have taken our meets national. Yeah. So people from all over the country can join and participate. In addition to that, what we have done is 4 years, I think 2016 was the first World Bipolar Day conference that we held. So that was a national level conference where delegates came in from all over the country. Yeah. It was held at a large auditorium, SP Jain Auditorium at Bombay Hospital, where people with lived experiences, mental health professionals joined in to share their views. And then there was no looking back from that moment onwards. So that also became an annual event. This year also on March 30th, we had already booked the venue, all the plans were in place, and then COVID happened. Right. But we have to move on. The second thing that enabled us hugely was we felt that besides the website, besides these meets, we need to be connected all through, yeah, so that we could be a virtual help platform for each other. Yeah. Yeah. With that in mind, what we did is we started a WhatsApp community, for again members and people with lived experiences as well as caregivers. Yeah. Okay. That grew to such a size that since WhatsApp groups have a limit of only 256, we had to shift it to Telegram app. All right. Yeah. So now our national group is on Telegram app, and we have local groups which are based in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, on the WhatsApp groups. Yeah. Right. So we have local communities as well as a pan-India community. Yeah. Right. And you won't believe the nurturing ability of this group, these groups. Yeah. So it is like a virtual, we have members who you can call fire extinguishers. Somebody who needs a troubleshooting and help, and that's the other thing I take a lot of joy and pride from. We have developed such fantastic mentors from within our community. Yeah? Right. See, there is very little learning like lived experience, I believe, Rajika. Yeah. What your own journey of travels teaches you, very few books of theory can teach you. Yeah. Especially in terms of coping techniques. So what resonates with me might resonate not with everybody, but with a large segment of the group. And similarly, right. I have learned a lot from our members also. Their sharing. So each one has their own, hacks of dealing with life situations, of coming, getting out of a depressive episode, or how to manage lethargy or brain fog and these kind of issues. Right. We have actually prevented self-harm and suicidal, ideation and sort of intentions by stepping in, Rajika, let me say that also on 4 to 5 occasions. Yeah. Mm. By members calling up that person, guiding them to a mental health professional. Yeah. Have a person speak to that professional. Even that, to that extent, that is happening. Right. Does it stop at that? In December 2019, one of our members had hit a full-blown mania. I had noticed that was an issue, yeah, that he was facing. He was in denial. I mean, obviously, like most of people with mania would be, because of the impaired judgment during that right. episode. So we had to call over his family from who were in another city in India, because assisted hospitalization needs a family member to sign the documents. Yeah. Right. We got him admitted to hospital. So the community goes beyond just verbal support. Right? it should be there for the real crisis moment, to be there for the person. Yeah. That's it. And in the longer term, what we are planning is we are looking at converting Bipolar India into a trust.
Okay.
I think it is time now that we formalize it as an institution, because then it would have a legacy much beyond me. It's no more about an individual. It wasn't meant to be at any stage, and now I think the time is ripe to do that. In fact, the process had already begun, but again, as I said, lockdown came in at that juncture, and all these things happen in physical form. The applications and all those things. So. That has been delayed by a little. I mean, the time frame has been pushed a bit, but it's still there, on the annual.
Yeah. Sir, I have like no words on how far you've come and how supportive this community just sounds to be. And I wish all of us had access to something like this, because even though if you might not be having like a full-blown episode, or you might not be having like a full diagnosis, but there are always low times, and those ups and downs that we have emotionally, all of us go through.
Yes.
And if in those cases, if we have such a supportive community with us who can just be there, and we know that if we text on the group, somebody or the other will reply. It's not that you're alone. That is one of the biggest problems that we face. That we feel that we are all alone and nobody will understand what you're going through, right? And if there's a counter to that, like, it just sounds so brilliant. Right. So,
in fact, what you shared was so powerful, that factor of being alone. My feeling so desperately alone in 2003, what I had narrated, that I am the only person with this kind of a unique disorder. I am a 1 in a million. I don't think anybody else has it. That was my notion back then, right? And now we have got this kind of a community. So people realize not only is this very much prevalent, there are people living with this challenge, and more so that people are successful with this, despite these challenges in their lives, in their personal lives, in their professional lives, in the various walks of life, right? So that is very reassuring. So within our community, we have people with bipolar disorder who are doctors, surgeons, PhDs, professors, researchers. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Right.
So don't you think that would inspire the rest of the crowd? Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
That this is believable. Yeah. Yeah. For especially people who are still on tenterhooks. For instance, we even have the very young lot. Somebody who is just 19 or 20 or something, who is still into the higher education stage, and that lack of self-belief. You have some anchor to hook onto. Yeah, there are so many successful from our own community. These are small hurdles that I have to pass, overcome in my path, but I will be able to do it. So it does give you a perspective beyond your own, immediate world. Yeah.
Definitely. Research has shown, sir, that if you have a strong role model somewhere around you, you are much more likely to actually achieve certain achievements in your life than just having an assumption that I might or might not be able to do something. So on that note, how can anybody be a part of this support group? So if in case there are listeners who are listening to this conversation and want to be a part of this
support group, especially if somebody wants to not disclose their identity or something, our website is there, bipolarindia.com. We have a contact form where people can just send in their request to be part of the community with all their details, their name. See, the reason we get in the details is just to not for any breaching confidentiality. We are not a commercial organization. We don't pass on the data to any other third party. All right, yeah, that it's our own community for us, by us, and created for us. Yeah, to nurture us. So one doesn't need to feel insecure about passing on such information. There are people who are, directly writing in the comment section on the blogs, Rajika, or on one of the main pages of the website. Yeah.
Right.
So we have seen that kind of openness also. My name is so and so. My name is this. Can you please add me to the group? So we have come to that level of openness also. But
Right.
I respect a person's wish to be want it to be confidential, so you can put it across in through the contact form also. We have a presence on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter handle, we have an Insta handle. So you could message us on either of the channel, all of these channels, whichever is your comfort level. Yeah. We are accessible through all these media.
Right. So anybody who's listening to this conversation, the links are there in the description below. The link to the website, to link to search pages on different social media handles. If in case you want to do join, please do comment or to go visit the website. If you want, you can also comment in the comments below, and we will get you in touch with Sir and his community. So on that note, sir, we have almost come to the end of this conversation. So is there any one advice that you would like to give to, somebody who's living with bipolar in India and does not have the support that you've been providing? What advice would you like to give to them?
Firstly, I would say, see, especially to a person who is young and is in a phase of struggle, the biggest challenge is to open up, than to confide in somebody, it is our innate nature to sort of, not to reveal our vulnerability to to any outsider.
Right.
Some people are hesitant to even share it with a family person. Yeah. So I would say the key part is opening up, confiding in somebody. Yeah. Somebody who you trust, of course. Somebody
Right.
who you feel is going to be empathetic in approach and not scoff you and in fact pull you down further. That's important also, right? Yeah.
Right.
You can get both sorts of people. Yeah. So
Right.
if you can open up, that is one thing. Second thing is there are now umpteen number of helplines available wherever you are in India. If you are in doubt, seek help anonymously without your name being revealed. That is another resource for you. Yeah. There are n number of portals and information websites available. But sometimes I feel if you're not in a phase to take in all that information, that can be counterproductive also. So,
Right.
so I would say have somebody handhold you in this phase is very important. Yeah. And there is no shame in being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or for that matter, any mental health challenge.
Right.
Yeah. I say openly to the world, I have bipolar disorder, because that's a innate part of me. All right. I'm looking forward to the day where people will look at health as a complete holistic picture, So just in the way, I don't feel stigmatized by saying I have asthma. Why should I feel stigmatized or feel that I'll be discriminated against if I say I have bipolar disorder? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Both are health issues. Yeah. And one should recognize them as health issues. Open up about them, seek help where you can, and believe in yourself. Yeah. What might seem as being really overwhelming at this juncture, is not going to remain so. You have the resources within you to overcome it. Yeah. I didn't believe it at that time, but trust me, you can do you can come out of it. You can live a very successful and fulfilling life. Yeah, that is possible. So once you have that sense of belief, everything else will fall into place, and you will look for the right steps to get there. Yeah.
Definitely. I think those are very wise words. And
Thank
just like
you.
you said, there shouldn't be a stigma. This is what all of us are aiming for. And this is also what MHT stands for. We
Yeah.
have to revolutionize mental health somewhere or the other. We have to break the stigma. And, just like Sir said, he has bipolar and he also has asthma, and he's okay with both. So, on that note, this is, like we've come to the end of the conversation. So thank you so much, sir, for coming and talking to us, sharing these wonderful thoughts, and also your journey with us today.
Thank you, Rajika, and the team at Mental Health Today, firstly, for inviting me to this session, and hope this message instills hope in and belief in at least a few people. I believe even one person's life turning around can make a difference in this world. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, so we should
Definitely, sir.
continuously keep doing our efforts. Thank you,
Definitely.
Rajika. Thank you very
Def-
much.
Definitely, sir. This is exactly what we want. Even if this recording just alters a little bit of mindset in even one person, our
Yeah,
purpose is served. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we don't know
on
what will click with somebody, yeah,
right, we
at a
don't know.
critical point in time.
Right. And this is exactly what we are hoping for. So, on that note, this is the end of the conversation with Sir today. And please do go check out the description below. Sir's details are there, Bipolar India's details are there. If you want to do join them, please do mention in the comments below, or you can reach out to him directly. And so, you can be a part of such a great support system that he provides. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be coming back again next week soon.
Thank you very much, Rajika, and thank you to the viewers also.